Good afternoon. On behalf of the Department of the Air Force Chief Data and AI Office, welcome to the first Innovation Connect of 2023. My name is Colonel Ryan Keel, and I'm the Deputy Chief Data and AI Officer, and I will be your moderator today. The purpose of Innovation Connect is to create a collaborative atmosphere for those working in the DoD to cross-pollinate ideas across organizations to enhance innovation, identify and solve problems related to R&D and scaling. We're excited about today's event, and thank you for attending. To get started, I would like to first share a few housekeeping rules. If you are not a presenter, please keep your camera off and the microphone on mute. Our speaker will give an overview of his topic or overview of their topic, followed by a Q&A session. We encourage you to ask questions using the chat feature throughout the presentation so that we may address them at the end. Second, we also ask that you keep your questions to the topics presented and refrain from any media-related questions or advertisements of your company or organization. Questions will be read aloud immediately following the presentation for our guests to answer. For this month's Innovation Connect, our incoming CDAO, Chief Data and AI Officer, Ms. Eileen Vidrine, will interview Mr. Nick Sinai, the co-author of Hack Your Bureaucracy, Get Things Done No Matter What Your Role on Any Team, published by Hatchet in 2022. Today, our two distinguished guests will discuss how to make your bureaucracy work for you, regardless of your industry, role, or team. And with that said, it is my distinct pleasure to briefly introduce each of our guest speakers today. Our first speaker has a rich history with our office, and we're excited to share that she'll be returning later this month as the DAF Chief Data and AI Officer. Ms. Eileen Vidrine has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the government and federal sectors and has served in numerous leadership positions within the federal government. Most recently, she was detailed to the White House as the Senior Strategic Advisor for Data to the Federal Chief Information Officer, Office of Management and Budget, Executive Office of the President. Ms. Vidrine has been masterful at developing and implementing strategies for enterprise data management, analytics, and digital transformation to ultimately optimize performance and drive innovation in and across all missions and operations. We're excited about her return as our CDAO and look forward to continuing to drive digital innovation and transformation within the DAF. Next, Mr. Nick Sinai is a senior advisor at Insight Partners, a venture capitalist and private equity firm, and he serves on the boards of Rebellion Defense, Hawkeye 360, Leo Labs, and Shift 5. Mr. Sinai is also an adjunct faculty at the Harvard Kennedy School and a senior fellow at the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. In addition, Mr. Sinai has served as a U.S. Deputy Chief Technology Officer in the White House Office Science of Technology and Policy, where he led President Obama's Open Data Initiative and helped start the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program. Before the program, he played a crucial role in crafting the National Broadband Plan for the Federal Communications Commission. And recently, in the summer of 2021, Mr. Sinai co-founded the U.S. Digital Corps, a new 2-year federal fellowship for early career technologists. Mr. Sinai is also the co-author, as we said, of Hack Your Bureaucracy, Get Things Done No Matter What Your Role on Any Team, which is published in 2022. I thank you both for joining us today, and we're excited to continue. And with that, Ms. Vidrine, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Colonel Kehoe, and thank you for everybody for connecting today. I'm pretty excited that we have Nick Sinai here today to talk about his most recent publication, Hack Your Bureaucracy. Just like when I read this, and I will for folks that are new to the CDAO office. I am an avid reader. I'm constantly reading or doing some sort of book on tape or audiobook. And this is one of the top of my list because I'm an operational person, and it's like how to take a vision and make it operational. And I think that's the heart and soul of the Chief Data and AI Office here in the Department of the Air Force. I like to say that the whole team has grit. We started as a startup, and the team continues to flourish, starting small and scaling out. So today, Mr. Sinai is here with us to talk about his leadership journey that he co-authored this particular, I would say, Get Stuff Done handbook, that I think that it's really a foundational document in terms of taking some of the practices that we've been doing in the Department of the Air Force, driving innovation in the data space, and actually it's it's written down. So I think it's pretty exciting. So Nick, thank you for coming to talk to our Airmen and Guardian today and our DoD colleagues, because I think that sharing your journey can really help us accelerate change in our department. So welcome, and I'm going to ask you if you could kind of start the conversation for us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is great. I'm fired up that you are back in the role or coming back in the role. I'm so excited to be here. I see some names that I know and many that I don't. So thank you for taking this time to chat. I don't know if it's helpful. I can give a quick little introduction to the book if you want. Great. I had the great privilege of serving 5.5 years in the Obama administration, but it was kind of by accident. I was on the first day of my honeymoon in Italy. I opened up the newspaper and it said Lehman Brothers goes bust. The only problem was I had just joined Lehman Brothers Venture Partners to help open the Boston arm of the Lehman Venture Group, and which was a rounding error of kind of the larger Lehman Brothers. And so I turned to my wife and I said, you thought you married a venture capitalist, maybe not so much. And I was quite naive. I was like, well, I'm going to go get a job in Washington. I'm going to go get a job in the Obama administration, and ended up talking my way into the National Broadband Plan, one of these blue ribbon task force. We did smart grid, smart home, smart transportation, everything but smart people. So I had a great fun working on a bunch of IoT and energy environment types of issues in one of these commissions, and then came over to the Office of Science and Technology Policy inside the White House. And it was great fun. We worked on the data agenda, M1313, and President Obama's Open Data Executive Order. We did a bunch of data jams and data paloozas, helped start and run the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program. But look, I was essentially middle management in a lesser policy council inside the presidency. And so very quickly, we kind of learned what worked and what didn't. And I think actually being in kind of the outer rings, so to speak, it's not like the Pentagon where the E ring is the most powerful. If you're kind of the outer rings of the presidency, you pretty much understand that if you have to get stuff done, you're going to have to partner with other people, and that's inside the building, but it's also, of course, in the agencies where they actually do stuff. And so Marina, who came and worked briefly for me, but then my boss at the time, US CTO Todd Park, put her in as the CTO of the VA at age 28. So I think she's the youngest SES, at least that I've been able to discover. And so we opened the book with Marina being in a cabinet meeting. She was called to come to a quarterly cabinet meeting because the VA was not making enough progress on a particular initiative, and it was her fault. And so she knew that she was the whole reason she came to a cabinet meeting, in the West Wing, was so that the president could ask her about it. And when that time came, she explained to him kind of the particular issue. I think you'd all appreciate it. It's actually an accreditation issue of trying to get two systems to talk to each other and certify a new process and all those kinds of things. And he thought about it for a little bit, and he said, would it be helpful if I recorded a video telling VA employees that they have to approve this new process? And she said, thank you, Mr. President, I'll take that under advisement and get back to you if that's necessary. But we wanted to start the book with that because here you have the leader of the free world, the commander of our armed forces, who could not make the VA bureaucracy move faster. And ultimately, it was up to Marina and all of her colleagues to figure out how they were going to make those changes incrementally, but also then scale. And so we wanted to really start that because it's a book of empowerment. It's sometimes leaders and CEOs and commanders kind of institute change, but in our experience, Marina and I's experience, we've seen a lot more change instituted and snowball into real meaningful change by people at various levels inside the organization. And so we put together a set of tactics and a set of stories There's plenty of from the VA, but we also have some good Air Force stories. There's the founding story of Kessel Run. Some of my stories, mostly failures at the White House when I got thrown out of the White House Science Fair, and some other interesting moments. And really the stories of some of our friends and some of the tactics of how we were able to make progress and kind of what we learned through failure. And so, you know, we wanted to put these down and share them with the world. And I really hope that you all get a chance to read them. And I hope that not only do you find them helpful, but I suspect that many of them you already know or practice. And so you say, well, yeah, we already do that, or I know how to do that, or this is something that, you know, maybe you have a new tactic too. So that's just a little bit of intro into the book, Hack Your Bureaucracy. And I'm really excited to spend this time with you.
Well, thanks, Nick. I appreciate that because early in the book, you talk about finding the real org chart, the real organizational structure. And I think that story helped really elevate the fact that partnerships really matter in terms of trying to figure out how to navigate the space. And I like to say that our group here tends to be very innovative disruptors in a great way, in a great positive way, and trying to find that critical change champion to help move that forward at the speed of mission, I think really matters. So when I looked at the scene setting of the book, and then it talked about identifying the real org structure, I thought that's very interesting for our particular group, because we have so many unique organizations that stand up that have that, I would say, sense of purpose and sense of power to accelerate mission faster.
Yeah, we're big fans of really understanding the true org chart. I mean, it's not that the written org chart is certainly important, and you should know that, but you know, you want to understand how decisions are really made and how things really work in your organization. And I think that's true whether it's public sector or private sector. And so we're big fans of taking the time to map it out and actually thinking about, you know, what are the different incentives and risks. You know, people kind of see they may be motivated by different things. It may be recognition or promotion or glory or those kinds of things, but other people, you know, may be motivated to be a quiet professional, or maybe motivated in other ways, and they may have different perceptions about risk, right? And kind of failing at different levels or in different ways. And if you don't really understand all of that, it's hard to partner and make kind of authentic allies. I think a big theme of our book is really how do you build those trusting relationships with people, not just in your particular, we call it guild, but think of it as your MOS, right? So it's easy to kind of you know, break bread and make friends with people in your particular guild. But what about folks who are in a different functional area, a different service, a different organization? Like how do you actually band together with them to get stuff done? And so we talk about this idea of a cuirass. And so in Kurt Vonnegut, his book Cat's Cradle, he talks about a cuirass. He actually has it in a religious version of God putting a bunch of people on earth that you're going to band together who you didn't know, and that informal group of people are going to get something done. We have a more secular version in our book, the cuirass, and you know, it could be people inside of the Air Force or inside of your particular unit, inside of the CDAO, inside the Air Force, but it also could be people across, you know, different commands, across different services, across different government agencies. And instead of thinking of people who are there to block you, actually think about there are unexpected people to try and help you, right? And how do you actually find them? How do you build authentic relationships based upon mutual understanding and reciprocity and that kind of relationship? And we talk about very practical ways, right? So one of the things that Marina had at the VA was the Grilled Cheese Club. And she simply got a bunch of executives together, broke some fire codes, and had George Foreman grills, make grilled cheese sandwiches, served red wine, and had her team do some demos of some of the stuff they were working on. And it was usually to 15s and SESs and other folks inside the VA. The VA is 400,000 people. It's the largest federal civilian agency. So there's a pretty good sized leadership there. And these were people who weren't in her direct chain of command, weren't in, but they were people she just invited. And over time, she built that cuirass of people who knew what she was doing and was able to vouch for her, who were able to celebrate the good work. And so we're big fans of building that informal network of people, that cuirass, because that's how you get things done quickly.
One of the other things that you use the word failure in a really positive light. If we go back to, if we look at NASA has a model where they talk about failing fast. And sometimes in the DoD, it's not a politically okay word. And it's not a safe place, quote, to fail. So what tips or can you give us to try to rebrand or try to understand that in order to accelerate change, sometimes you're going to come across some speed bumps, and it's okay and it's expected.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to one, psychological safety on teams to talk about what you learned, what worked and what didn't. If we're only talking about the positive elements of any project, initiative, mission, whatever. I mean, we have to have honest after action reports. You have to have honest assessment of what's working and what's not, and be data driven. I mean, we're talking to the data professionals here about what's going on. And so part of it comes from psychological safety, right? The other part of it is we have to find ways to do things in kind of faster cadences. My observation, and this is not unique, that DoD and the US federal government likes to fail at massive, long feedback cycles, right? So we'll put in 10 years into something, and if it's not working, we'll just plow a few more $1 billion and just a few more cranks to the turn, and we'll get it, God damn it, and just finally make it to kind of work, right? And when you think about the opportunity cost of that, that actually is failure just at a huge scale. We just don't like to call it failure. And so part of it is just thinking about the opportunity cost of, if you learn something in 2 weeks or 2 months versus it taking 5 years, that's actually a huge win in my book, because you've learned perhaps the user experience or the airman experience isn't what you thought it would be, and it isn't actually being used. That's great if you learn that in 2 weeks or 2 months. It's not so great if it takes 2 years and you realize you could have learned it in 2 weeks or 2 months.
So one of the other terms is the concept of bureaucracy. The DoD tends to be a very, I'm going to say, traditional. We love our protocol and our traditions. How do we find a balance between what I'm going to say great traditions and the concept to try to accelerate change faster?
Yeah, I think it's this question of, and look, I've never served in uniform. I've never served in DoD as a civilian. So I'm just an observer and know many people who have. And so I think the question here is, can we find ways to keep the traditions and celebrate the people and the mission while putting aside some industrial era culture and processes, right? And so we can say, look, the military does a really good job of attracting and celebrating mission-oriented people. And the military does a really nice job of celebrating families, right? And celebrating people's partners, right? I've been to enough retirement ceremonies where it's just a really heartwarming thing to see. And so there's certain parts of and each service has its own sets of traditions and And of course, each specialty inside those services have all their traditions. But we also have to ask objectively, like, what are the culture and processes that are holding us back? And some of it is still stuck in the 60s. And so, and then I watched some of that's the 1960s there. And I watch, a traditional place like an Air Force PEO wrestle with how to modernize. So we talk about Kessel Run in the book. One of Kessel Run's values is ideas over rank. And they don't actually wear uniforms except for 1 or 2 days a week. And that creates some interesting tension inside of Kessel Run, where folks are encouraged to kind of promote the best ideas and not defer to the highest rank when making decisions, right? To really be data driven and to promote a learning culture. But this is also a traditional PEO, and in fact, the leader of that particular unit inside that PEO is actually a commander, right? Beach, and then before him, Enrique, they were commanders, and I've gone to their ceremonies. So, right, you have that tension of being a commander, but also trying to promote a more meritocratic or kind of flat infrastructure. And to me, I think that's one of the really exciting opportunities for your all office is in DoD. If we can have a little real talk, sometimes we do a lot of PowerPoint. We do the briefing for one individual for the first star, and then for the 2-star, for the 3-star, and for the 4-star. So you kind of see this PowerPoint progression, and we have this great opportunity to brief on live data. And I know that's increasingly happening, and your office is pioneering a lot of that. But I think just culturally across the services and DoD, we have this opportunity to brief on live data and to really empower airmen, broadly speaking, and guardians, out in the field to kind of wrangle data and to do that kind of analysis rather than just having it kind of closely held.
The other, and I'm reading some of the stuff that's going on in the chat right now. So one of the other conversations that I see going on in the chat is trying to find the balance of making sure that our leadership is keeping up and that we empower people at the right level to make the decision to be able to accelerate that change. So I go back to the knowing your real organization, or the culture and the organization of your particular component. How do you find the balance or to make sure that your leadership is ready to embrace that change? I like to say that I have these amazing digital natives that are coming into our department. They've grown up data and digital. It's part of their core DNA. My generation was a little bit different. And so how do we really take the power of our digital natives that are coming into our department on a daily basis and really leverage that, and also flip it in terms of how do we as senior leaders need to really support them and leverage their capabilities that they're bringing into the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. We were very cognizant of this in the White House, and Marina was at the VA, of not everybody knows everything. It doesn't matter what your level or rank. And yet, in any organization with seniority, people don't like to be embarrassed. They don't like to admit that they don't know something. And so we talk about how it can be a superpower to continue to ask what we call newbie questions. And it's easier when you're new to an organization. Even if you're senior, you come in and you say, well, I'm just the new person here. Let me ask some questions. But then it gets harder after 90 days, to say, wait a second, I don't get that. Like, I'm still confused, right? It's always harder to ask what you think is a dumb question, but it's actually probably a profound question. Or if you don't get it, then maybe there's lots of other people who don't get it. So we encourage people to find ways directly and indirectly to keep asking those newbie questions, because I think that helps kind of keep challenging. We're also big fans of really trying to understand where people are coming from. And so it's easy for, I think, the younger generation to have a bunch of assumptions about the older generation and vice versa. And it's the best way for them to really understand each other is to find ways to walk a mile in each other's shoes, to kind of get out of the office and find ways where they are working together and appreciating each other's talents. I'm a huge fan of the next generation of technical talent in government. I helped start the U.S. Digital Corps, which is about early career 2-year technical fellows. Right now, it's mostly in federal civilian, but I hope we're able to bring it to DoD as well. And one of my former students actually founded a nonprofit called Coding It Forward, which does 10-week summer internships for data scientists and other technologists in federal government. So I'm a huge fan of those early career technologists. And the way we work is changing too, where it's not only are we working more virtually, but we're also kind of in and out of organizations. And so you may work 2 years or 4 years or 10 years. There's just less people who are going to work 20 years or 30 years in one particular organization. And so we have to find ways to absolutely embrace that. And that, I think, is a positive thing, because they come in with that energy, that experience, the set of skills, and that those collisions, if we can embrace them rather than kind of shying from them, is something that's going to push our culture in a positive way. And it's going to teach us all a lot.
I also think it helps us build trust. And I'm looking forward to the fact that when I come in on Tuesday, I get to be a newbie again, and I get to start that clock all over again, because I think the other piece is it's that commitment to lifelong learning. It's in career long learning. It's, what you study in school today, it's going to change. And so you have to be ready for the next opportunity. And so I think that's the other really exciting thing, is that there's so many potential opportunities that are going to be available for people in our audience today that we don't even know what they are, because the technologies have it, but you just have to have that commitment to career and lifelong learning so that you're ready for that opportunity. But one of the other programs that you're working with is a program called Defense Ventures. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah, absolutely.
So as you probably can tell, I'm passionate about kind of talent, generally speaking. And that's how I met my co-author through the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program, was recruiting Marina. She says that I tricked her into staying into government. And now we're still friends. But I'm also fans of can we find ways to flow talent out of organizations? So not all talent programs or people flow programs are about internships and fellowships and bringing people into organizations. I also think that it's super valuable for people to go outside of their organization, and whether that's a sabbatical, could be an externship, a loaned executive program, any of those kinds of things. And so I became aware of the Defense Ventures program, which some of you may know about. It's a really fantastic program that got stood up in the last few years. And it actually was going to be, I think, the Air Force Ventures program, but at the last minute, they made it DoD-wide, although Air Force seems to be the dominant service in it. And the idea is basically, it's mostly uniformed, although I think they're opening it up also to some civilian DoD as well. Spending 8 weeks, 2 weeks essentially in a cohort of, I don't know, maybe say 30 or 40 folks, learning about the innovation economy, learning about venture capital, learning about startups and scale-ups, about kind of these high growth companies that have tremendous promise. And then 6 weeks internship, either in a venture capital firm like ours, or in one of the startups or scale-ups directly. And so we've participated in this program now 3 times, and it has just been tremendous. I mean, we've had Ian Eischen from the Chief of Staff's office. We had Lieutenant Colonel who was a former Special Forces pilot who became a foreign area officer in Ukraine. Like, it's just really fascinating people who, they have taught us about DoD and helped us as we've evaluated national security investments and all of those kinds of things. But really, they've learned a lot about startups and scale-ups and venture capital and how we're making decisions and how we're thinking about capabilities and so forth. And they go back and serve for ideally a number of years still. And I think that's really, it's a complement or a substitute to professional military education in only 8 weeks. So if you guys aren't aware of it, check it out. It's called Defense Ventures. The contractor that runs it is a company called Shift. We've had really great people from Air Force, from Army and NGA, Navy participate at Insight. And every time I've learned so much more. I have greater appreciation for their service. I've learned just, DoD is not an easy bureaucracy and an easy thing to learn from the outside. So having people come spend 6 weeks with you while we teach them about how we think about deals, how we think about investing, how we think about board of directors and all of those kinds of things. They teach us about kind of the way the military works and the way DoD works. And, we're just one firm. I think have now been over 100 people who have gone through this program. So you're getting this whole cohort of people who are getting greater exposure to the innovation economy. And I think that's really important because some of the largest companies in the world were startups and scale-ups, and some of the most interesting technology that is going to be critically important for maintaining our strategic advantage and deterring adversaries and winning if we need to. That's increasingly going to be software based and be coming from the innovation economy. And we used to be in an era where the smartest people were kind of in the DoD ecosystem, and Silicon Valley is very much almost a child of DoD that has grown up and become a very rowdy adolescent, and in many cases is larger than DoD in many ways. And I think there's just opportunities to continue to bring those back together. Is something that I know that Secretary Carter was extraordinarily passionate about, and that's part of his amazing legacy is pushing the DoD closer to what I call metaphysical Silicon Valley.
Well, I appreciate that because it has helped us bring in some great capability into our enterprise. So I think it's a win-win. We bring in great tools to support our airmen and guardian, and we're getting some of the best out there. And I think we understand it a little bit better. Colonel Kehoe, I see that we have several questions out in the pool. Did you want to pick one for us, please?
Yes, ma'am, sure. The first question is, Mr. Sinai, what part of your journey would you call your finest hour? You faced and overcome many challenges, but which one stands out to you the most?
I am most proud of the people that I had a chance to work with. The people that I've had a chance to recruit to government, many of whom have eclipsed me and gone on to do just tremendous things. So, and Marina is a great example of that, right? So she came in as a Presidential Innovation Fellow at the Department of Education for 6 months. And, candidly, what she was able to get done at the Department of Education in 6 months wasn't much. But we recruited her over to the White House. She was working on some of the open data and the data.gov reboot and some of those things, and got pulled into the VA backlog. And she did such a great job working on some of the backlog issues, that we took a chance and we put a 28-year-old who never finished college and did not fit kind of the traditional vision that people had of what the VA CTO should be. And we put her in there. And if you fast forward, she was critical to transforming the VA from their digital experience. And we tell a bunch of stories there about how she really made a series of trades, paperclip trades. It's that old story about a guy who took a red paperclip and through a series of trades traded for a house. But she did that. She had no budget. She had no people reporting to her. She was told to go fix the VA, and yet nobody wanted to meet with her, primarily because she had been red teaming the VA and auditing the VA from the White House. And so she came with everybody was like, uh-oh, I don't want her near my project. And the story of how she was able to build trust and build momentum through frankly, a series of things that are probably adjacent to what you think her job would be. How she taught security guards in the VA to code, and how that saved money and created so much more momentum. How the Obama administration did kind of the first website launch after healthcare.gov, which had, as you all know, was quite the disaster. And so how she helped the VA launch a successful website after that and build that political credibility to the point where they were able to consolidate over 1,000 websites into a single one and go from a VA-centric website to a veteran-centric website. How now they've had 2 million veterans apply for health benefits online. When she was there, it was basically zero, because there was this belief that veterans didn't apply for healthcare benefits online, even as late as 2013. And trust in the VA has gone up 25 percentage points. So, I am super proud of people like Marina, who have had the privilege of recruiting to government, who have had the privilege of working with. And so that's why I'm passionate about the U.S. Digital Corps, Coding It Forward, and the Defense Ventures programs. Is those kinds of programs where you get to meet kind of really great folks who want to make a difference and find ways to support them and put them in great organizations. I mean, that's it's better than any executive order that I drafted or policy that I wrote. Those are ultimately words on a page, right? And they don't mean anything if you can't execute. And so we saw plenty of executive orders and legislation that didn't have any impact in real life. But the work that Marina and all of her colleagues that we recruited, and she built a whole team there, like the work that they did matters to veterans.
Okay, I think, thank you. And the next question pertains to the saying or the quote, looking between the silos. It is a huge gap for the services. We've just started doing this with data, repurposing data to meet the needs of the mission sets that we never thought were possible. For example, leveraging HR data to uncover concerning behaviors and countering inside threats. It looks like the question ended there.
Yeah, well, no, I'll take it, Colonel.
Okay, copy.
So just the tactic of looking between the silos is one of our favorite tactics. And the reason is there's less kind of antibodies where there are handoffs or between the silos. So if you're going after the core function of a particular organization or group or unit, they're going to be very defensive about that. But if you look at the handoffs or where that organization, that mission starts to slow down or even stop, that's where there's tremendous opportunity to make change. And if you actually, roll up your sleeves and try and trace a process all the way through, you'll find that those handoffs, maybe from HR to finance or from unit A to unit B, you'll just see how much opportunity there is for improvement, and there's less kind of bureaucratic antibodies. And so one of the stories we tell in the book is Marina essentially tracing a particular process in state government where they were actually filling out forms in triplicate where you press down on the three-sided paper, or the paper that, 3 copies. And it was child welfare in the state of Washington, I believe, thought that the DMV wanted it, and DMV thought that the child welfare people were kind of in the 12th century and were still doing it, and they hadn't communicated, and it took someone who was actually empowered to trace the process of registering foster parents to actually go through the system and see that there's just real opportunity. And all she did was put them together in a room and have them explain the process. And when you map out a process from end to end, oftentimes people will come up with great ideas on how to fix it, how to improve it, how to automate it, how to modernize it, et cetera. It's just oftentimes processes are kind of cross silo, and the silo, the work is mostly done in the silos. So we're big fans for change agents, or really anyone who wants to make progress, is look between the silos, because you can make a lot of progress quickly. And we're big fans of momentum, because once you build that momentum, you can then, the antibodies from both of those silos may be reduced a bit.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so the next question is from Mr. Faulkner. He says, one of the challenges I have is how to accelerate digital literacy for missions with early and mid-career airmen, as well as for senior leaders. What are the Clausewitz and case studies that I should be pushing to my squadron and group as we embrace innovation?
I'm going to confess something to you that you may not, Eileen, I don't know if I've told you this, but I have real mixed feelings about the word innovation. And, look, I taught a class for 5 years called Technology and Innovation in Government. The CTO's office in the presidency is very much of an innovation and policy office. And the challenge with the word innovation is it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is accomplish our mission better, faster, for the American people, for the airmen, for whatever we're trying to get done, whether it's deter the adversary, or whether it's a humanitarian mission, or simply to improve another airman's life a little bit, right? And so I'm a big fan of, can you find ways to really tie it back to mission? It's not an original comment, but if you aren't able to tie it that way, then people are kind of they kind of struggle to put it in context. And so just, for us, when we were doing those data jams and data paloozas in the Obama administration, we very much tied it to the kinds of policy and mission that the political leaders cared about, right? So if they cared about energy efficiency and they cared about clean energy, and then we were able to do an energy data jam where we were able to bring in data scientists and academic data engineers and all these kinds of folks who come together to talk about clean energy and kind of workshop ideas and so forth. So I think finding ways to tie it to mission, finding ways to have people get excited naturally, right? Because if you're telling people eat their vegetables, that's not going to be effective. That is, people are going to want to upskill themselves for their own career, and because they're going to want to get something done. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about Eileen being back in the role here, is that, and really the legacy of this office is an office dedicated to empowering airmen and guardians, right? And so it's not we're going to solve all the problems on high. It is, we're going to help you solve the problems, and that's powerful. But you're going to have to find the people who want to solve problems, right? And so I think finding those people, celebrating those people, finding ways to promote those people, to celebrate them, to recognize them, and to show that they are doing the right thing. I think that's something that you all ought to be thinking about. It sounds like your chief of staff is thinking about that way as well. And so that's really exciting.
Nick, I probably want to share with the group that, over the last 2 years, we've done, our team in the CIO's office has done a lot of work with Digital University to make some really great online content available to all of our airmen across our enterprise. However, I would also say that our group at the MIT AI Accelerator is nearing the deployment of some additional content through the MIT that they're bringing into our Cloud One, which is really data and AI focused content. And when that launches, I will ask the CDAO team, specifically probably Major Rashina Carter and her colleague, Major John Radovan, to possibly do a lunch and learn or to introduce that content to the group, because I think that the content that's coming out of MIT is some of the best online content in specifically for data and AI right now. So I'm pretty excited about that's coming out. So as we're trying to build digital acumen, we recognize that we're going to need to bring even more capability in, and it needs to be at the speed of vision, and there needs to be an easy button, easy to get content, so that it's ready to go when somebody has a moment.
Yeah, I love this idea of digital university. And I've been talking to Lauren Knausenberger about it for the few years that she's been working on it, and so it's fun to see the growth of it. And look, it's great that it's multi-vendor, that it's designed to really be broad-based for airmen and guardians broadly speaking, right? And I love that you're finding and creating additional kind of data-centric and AI content for the department. I think that's super helpful. You want it to be usable. People learn in different ways, right? Some people want to sit through, an actual hour-long video, but other people are going to want to do things hands-on and do things through exercises. Some people learn through cohorts, right? And that's a big part. I know that I do far better when I have a cohort. So there's different kind of learning modalities, and it's got to support the airmen and Air Force civilians in a way that lets them succeed in their careers and succeed in mission, both individually and collectively.
Colonel Keogh, I'm gonna punch over.
Kick it back to me. Yes, ma'am. Okay, the next question is, how can we ensure continuity with respect to mission program goals and project direction when government stakeholders are encouraged to cycle through to the next position every 2 to 3 years for things such as continued performance or a promotion cycle? Is there a way to gracefully onboard the next leaders and gracefully offboard the current leaders so there's a meaningful transition and transfer of knowledge before leaving or moving on to the next challenge? I used to be on the gov side and now transition to contractor. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And you do see in the private sector, in some of our companies, we will have someone who will be shadowing somebody or being in a role kind of temporarily or something like that. And so it's a great question about, can we find ways to have more thoughtful handoffs between, and I'm no expert on the military system, so there may be some structural challenges to all of that. But one thing that we talk a lot about in the book, and one thing that I am a big fan of, is writing it down, right? And so and writing it down not in a way that is complicated and hard to understand, but what's your cheat sheet and what's the cheat sheet for the person who's coming behind you in your exact role. The no BS kind of, this is the way things really get done. Here are the things we're actually trying to do, and this is how we got it done. This is back to that psychological safety. Here's some things that didn't work. Like, we're always hesitant to write down things that didn't work and why they didn't work and what we learned. So the more that you can write those things down and have that internal transparency in an organization, I think that makes it easier for people to come in and out, frankly, because then you say, well, what can I read? What can I observe? How are we communicating what we're doing transparently inside a unit or organization? And that also makes those kinds of handoffs hopefully a little bit easier. The advantage to people coming in every 2 or 3 years is that there are opportunities, I hope, to make changes. And ultimately, I hate to break it to you, but the entire Air Force, the entire DoD is a man-made, human-created organization, right? Like we made all these rules. We can change all these rules. They are not set in stone. I know sometimes it feels like Congress does set things in stone, but the fact of the matter is these things are changeable, and we just have to say, well, maybe we want to, for certain type of command positions or certain type of roles, we want to have an overlap where someone comes in and shadows for 60 days, and that's just the way we're going to have to set up the system. And yes, that could take years to make that change service-wide, but we're also huge fans of try and actually show the change that you want. So can you find a small unit to prototype that change? We say pilot is the password in the book, but really we're just talking about can you show what you're talking about rather than just talk about it? Because if you said, hey, there's a great opportunity to have a more staggered overlap so that there's some mentorship and some handoffs, that's great. You put together a policy paper about it and you kind of get it up the chain and kind of get it through. Like that's important. Like that's how bureaucracies make decisions. And so I'm not saying don't do that, but it's so much more powerful if you found a place to pilot it and show that it's really working and it's providing real value. And that's ultimately, I think, much more effective in making change is when you are bringing small results, small momentum, small data to make bigger change.
Nick, I just went through transition as I was wrapping up my detail, and I think that the impact of the work that you're doing, writing it down succinctly, that resonated with my colleagues that were taking over portions of my portfolio as I was transitioning off. They saw upfront very clearly the why they were doing this, and I think that helped amplify the importance of the work that they were doing and helped get immediate buy-in. It wasn't just, oh, I'm doing this because it was required by statute, or it was, it was really, this was the importance of it. And so that impact piece, I think, is really critical because it can help not just amplify, but accelerate.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of start with why. And one of the things that I always had all my team do, and something that I encourage my students to do, is write a one-pager. And the magic of a one-pager is that it's much easier for anyone to read. And so once it's 2 pages or 3 pages or 4 pages, it's just a lot less likely that someone is going to get through all of that. And it's a real art to write a one-pager that has that bottom line up front, that describes the problem, that describes the solution, that has a fact or an anecdote or a story that crystallizes it, that talks about concrete next steps to advance. And it's one thing to write that in isolation, but it's another thing to write a draft of that and share it with some colleagues and get their feedback and get their improvements. And by the way, it's a great way to get some buy-in, at least awareness, if not consensus, on your initiative, your change, your product, the thing that you want to do, right? The automation, whatever it is. And so even though I'm talking to the data office, not the policy office, so to speak, but I'd encourage you guys to write one-pagers when you are proposing ideas and to workshop them with people and ask for the feedback, because when they provide that feedback, it gets that much stronger. And then you're able to essentially get more funding or get more people or get more visibility in an organization. I mean, ultimately, one of the things that we talk about in the book is being a public sector entrepreneur. And private sector entrepreneurs they need to raise capital, raise money. They need to build a product. They need to hire a team, right? So they're ultimately trying to get all of those things as people and capital and momentum and so forth. And the same thing is actually true when you're trying to make change inside of an organization. Is you're trying to get either recognition of your idea or your policy or your particular capability, right? You're trying to scale that. It may the dollars or the people may not, come to you in your particular unit, but you are trying to, get attention for your idea or project or policy or what have you. And so there's some parallels between private sector entrepreneurship and what we call public sector entrepreneurs. And so I've been privileged to work with a lot of great public sector entrepreneurs who have, made real policy and programmatic change and have started, whole new units. And that's what I love about the CDAO office. Is very much of a startup inside of the Air Force. It didn't really exist. There wasn't really a budget. I think you called it allowance, right? When you first got started. And you look at the impact now and the impact you all are going to make in 2023 and beyond. So I forgot what the question was, but you're just getting me excited about public sector entrepreneurship.
I think you addressed it, sir. It was related to continuity of mission as senior leaders transfer out. So this next question. The vibration that exists in organizations that produce and are willing to pivot when needed isn't present in certain organizations because they're beleaguered by reporting requirements, audits, compliance, etc. What would you suggest that could allow the accounting portion to continue without stifling progress?
Yeah, it's this balance between we have a bunch of requirements and we have to meet those requirements. And then there's other things that we want to do and feel that we should do to meet the why or the mission of our group, right? And so I think that's that tension that I think it's not just beleaguered units. I think it's all over government where you have a series of things that you have to do that you feel like, hey, I could do these better. And I could streamline them, I could consolidate them, I could find ways to deal with them in a better way and free up time for us to go do something that we think is consistent with our mission and better use of our time, frankly. So we have a couple ideas in the book about this specifically. One is to try the normal way first. Before you say, all this audit and compliance and reporting or accreditation or whatever it is not worth a hill of beans, and we're going to go move on and do the cool shiny thing, the innovative thing, to actually understand the normal way first, and whether that's an HR like a hiring process, whether it's an audit or certification thing, is to actually go through it and understand it. Because if you're going to speak to why it's broken and how it's broken and how it's not adding oversight or mission value, and you're going to propose an idea to streamline it, to automate it, to integrate it, to modernize it, your knowledge of how the normal process works is going to be that much more powerful, right? And this is the thing that Marina and I saw a lot of, was people coming in, hotshot folks who had accomplished a tremendous amount in the private sector and were parachuted into a particular agency or the White House, and what worked there didn't work necessarily in the VA or in any other agency. Part of it is because they made a series of assumptions, and those assumptions weren't true, but they actually didn't really understand the existing process. So for any of those of you who want to blow up, modernize, streamline, improve a particular process, I say, let's go do it. that's part of the mission of the CDAO office, I think, is to, if I understand it right, Eileen, is to empower airmen and guardians to use data and AI to create a more efficient, more lethal, a more nimble Air Force, right? But that means that we can't just say all this other stuff is crap. We have to understand it if we're going to advocate for it to be pushed aside, retired, deprecated. And in some cases, it can be streamlined or modernized or automated. There's a funny story, I think that's in the book. Marina's been telling a lot on our book tour, though, of there's a particular testing group at the VA for when you push a change to the website, and they wanted to review changes every quarter, right? Because that's kind of how often there's 1,000 websites that the VA ran, and so they kind of reviewed changes quarterly. And Marina, had instituted a continuous integration, continuous deployment, a CI/CD kind of process where she wanted to make changes daily. And she got talking to them, and they would always reject her changes. And she finally figured out that she could automate their no decision, and that she didn't need them to vote yes, she just needed them to vote. And so, in fact, what happened was she automated a no vote every single time from this particular testing unit, and that got formally recorded, and they were on record of saying they didn't approve of this particular change, but it let Marina move forward. And she understood the approval process to understand kind of how it worked. And if she hadn't really dug in and said, okay, well, I don't need everybody on this committee to vote yes, I only need this many votes to vote yes, or it's not as binding as I thought it was. And because she had tried the normal way first, because she had understood that process, she was able to actually automate that and move to a process where the VA now changes just about daily their software and their website.
Outstanding. So we've surpassed the hour mark, and I would like to offer both Ms. Vidrine and Mr. Sinai opportunities for any closing comments you'd like to provide.
Eileen, do you have closing comments?
Well, I would just like to thank you for coming and having this discussion with us today. I think that I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a conversation to help us really think positive change in impactful ways, measuring what matters, and really thinking deliberately and intentionally in terms of how to accelerate change to support our mission. So I'm truly grateful. And I'm also grateful for our airmen and guardians and our DoD colleagues that are on the call today to be our I like to say data is a team sport, and we have we had 100+ people on the call today, which I think is that's awesome to have that type of conversation. I'm super excited to come back to the Air Force after being out on detail for a year, and to coming into this to the CDAO seat. I think it for me, it's just I'm absolutely grateful and honored to be coming in and working with such an amazing group. So I'm just can't wait to be there on Tuesday isn't going to come fast enough. So but thank you.
I know they're excited to have you back, and I am also honored that everyone took this time to chat with us. It was a tremendous amount of fun. I'm in awe and appreciation of the work that you all do. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter, easy to find. If you like the book, Hack Your Bureaucracy, by all means, feel free to tweet it out, or LinkedIn. If you don't like it, just email me directly and we'll have a conversation. I really appreciate all that you do, and I just love this vision of empowering airmen and guardians to make the change that they want to make. I think that's how we build a modern Air Force and a modern Space Force. So count me in.
Awesome. Colonel Keogh, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yes, ma'am. So, Ms. Vidrine, Mr. Sinai, thank you so much for the lightning discussions today and for fielding the Q&A. We'd also like to thank those in attendance. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join today's program. It's with the support of our DoD innovators that Innovation Connect has become such a success, and we look forward to spotlighting more innovative projects in the future. I'd also like to personally thank those that are working behind the scenes today. Brooke, Lindsay, and Ty, thank you for your dedicated efforts to make this a success each and every month. Also, our approved videos of Innovation Connect will be available on the Department of Defense CDAO YouTube page. If you have any future topic for Innovation Connect, please send your recommendations to Ms. Ty Daniel, and our team will review your proposal. Also, please follow our LinkedIn and Twitter accounts as well for future events and registration information. And with that, this concludes today's Innovation Connect. Our next Innovation Connect is slated for 9 February with a special presentation from Colonel Tucker Cinco Hamilton, our DAF CDAO Chief of AI Testing and Operations, or the CATO. Colonel Cinco will provide an overview of the DAF Autonomy, Data, and AI Experimentation, better known as ADAX, and the newest AI Observatory and Proving Ground down at Eglin Air Force Base. With that, I thank everyone for your participation today, and we will see you again next month. Out here.